Hi, my name is Simon Kostanov, and I'm going to be talking about marijuana today. In my experiment, I'll be looking at how the use of marijuana affects students' test scores. Now, before I get into anything else, I want to tell you where all this began so that you can see why this study is important. This whole idea began when I first came to college. When I came to college, I had friends who smoked marijuana. I have never smoked marijuana, but my friends who do don't bother me. Skip ahead a few semesters in college, and I notice a trend. As my friends and I talk about GPAs, test scores, and grades, I notice that among my friends, the people that smoke marijuana the most have the highest GPAs, test scores, and grades. I also notice, between the sample size that is my friends and I, the more you smoke marijuana, the more relaxed you are. Therefore, in my head of course, not out loud, I concluded that the reason my friends that smoke marijuana have a higher academic performance is because they are less stressed out about grades and tests, and so they perform better in class. Even though I thought about this, I knew that I could never do anything about it because marijuana was illegal at the time. However, jump to January 2014. Marijuana is now legal in my state of Colorado. So I go online and start to look for studies that have been done about marijuana, and to my surprise, there is very little. So after all my research, which I will share with you in a minute, I concluded that, like my state, I must be the pioneer of marijuana. Because marijuana is legal in Colorado, it is up to us Coloradans to be the pioneers of marijuana research. Whether you like it or not, over the next couple of years, more and more states are going to legalize marijuana, so the time to start doing studies is now. So before I get to my experiment, I want to go over some of the relevant research I found. Since I have no bias towards marijuana, I decided to break up my research into pros and cons for smoking marijuana. Looking through articles and studies, it is clear that there is still a lot of contradiction and lack of research about cannabis. The purpose of this study is to add and help identify if cannabis can help improve students' grades. However, the more important purpose is just to add studies to demonstrate if marijuana is good or bad. Starting with the cons, there are some studies already that highlight the negativity of marijuana use. For example, a study by Lamrine in 2012 demonstrates that smoking marijuana has been found to produce an almost 5-fold increase in blood carboxyhemoglobin, nearly a 3-fold increase in inhaled tar, and retention in the lungs of 1/3 more tar as compared with smoking tobacco. Lamrine also said that increased risk for glioma, prostate, and cervical cancer have been noted among the non-tobacco using marijuana smokers, and that cancer of the head and neck have also been associated with marijuana use. Moving on to some of the pros, there are also studies that illustrate the benefits from marijuana. For example, Pierre in 2010 suggested that a patient that had PTSD had health benefits from his medical recommendation of cannabis. The cannabis helped with his chronic pain, insomnia, and anxiety. For some college students, marijuana is used as a way to relax and relieve stress from school. As Boswick said in his study, marijuana is touted as a kind of social lubricant, helping users relax and feel more expansive and less self-conscious. Even Hyman in 2009 said from his research that numerous studies indicate that cannabis is commonly and consciously used as a stress coping strategy. After reading a study that looked at the relationship between cannabis use and academic performance by Aria in 2012, he could only conclude that his study focused on a small but important piece of overall picture of the relationship between drug use and academic performance. He also concluded that further research is encouraged to fully explain the possible contribution of illicit drug use to academic performance. So the purpose of this experiment is to see if marijuana can benefit students' academic performance by relieving stress, as most of my research says. However, I think the bigger purpose of my experiment is just to add another experiment in the pros or cons list because marijuana lacks actual studies. I hope to inspire future research so that when people look into if they want to smoke marijuana or not, they know the facts. So that is why I added research that demonstrates the good and bad about marijuana. Because the real point of this study is to inform people about marijuana, only using facts. So finally, let's get into what my experiment was about. I took 90 students that were from the same major in college that had taken the same classes and divided them up into 3 groups of 30. The first group of 30 were students that smoked marijuana. The next 2 groups were of students that did not smoke marijuana. I gave all 3 groups a list of material from a class that all 90 of them had not taken and told them to study for a test in 3 days that will be over that material. The material was gathered from a professor that had given me a list of things that he would normally have his students look at for their first midterm. So basically, all 90 students had 3 days to learn what students would normally learn over a couple of months. Or as I like to think of it, what normal students do for their midterms. Before they left, the students were divided into 3 groups. The first group was told to take breaks by smoking marijuana during the 3 days. The next group was told to take breaks and could do anything, like watch TV or go play outside, except they could not smoke marijuana. The last group was told that they could not take any breaks but had to study non-stop. Therefore, you can see that I was trying to create a very stressful environment and see which group would best cope with the stress. The group that was most successful would have the highest average test scores. Now looking at the results, we can see that the cannabis group and the other stress reliever group both scored a 72%, which is 11% higher than the group that was told to only study. So now, what can we conclude from the results? Marijuana seemed to help students perform better on the test, most likely because it relieved their stress. However, it seems that any stress reliever that a student picks has the same effect on their academic performance as marijuana. We must also take into account our sample size. Because our sample size was so small, the results could have been altered. For example, it could be by coincidence that the marijuana group students are just better test takers. Therefore, I conclude that more research is needed in this subject area. I also hope that my project did its real purpose, which was to inspire people to do further research in the field. Again, my name is Simon Kostadinov, and thank you for listening. This concludes the presentation. Before I go, I want to inform you that the experiment and results you heard were made up for the purpose of this presentation. Also, here are the references to all the studies that you heard. There are 9 studies mentioned. Please feel free to pause this video and look at them if necessary.